Welcome to yet another episode of the Marination Project. I am Oswald Umseta and happy to have you here. This is week number 3, and the topic that is upon the recovery process is recovering a sense of power. And honestly, doing this week was intriguing because there was a lot of going down memory lane. There was a lot of uncovering anger, guilt, shame, places where those kind of like originated in a way. And then also going down memory lane to um, get back my power, so to speak. And there's a lot of nuggets uh, that were packed into this week that I thoroughly enjoyed. And I'm even struggling to know where exactly to start because there's just a lot to unpack. So today, forgive me if you see me looking down too, because there was a lot. They really, when I say there's a lot, like there was a lot. There was a lot to unpack. So kind of want to make sure it's structured and also it's like straight to the point. Right. So the first thing I really enjoyed about this week was it wasn't necessarily an easy breeze, but it was a very honest week. Like I had to be thoroughly honest with myself, especially regarding some circumstances that I discovered in my childhood. And I'm going to start with there actually. So there was in question a task where they asked, describe your childhood room, what you liked about it. And I remember being in resistance at first because I'm like, oh, I focused on the negative aspects of the question because I'm like, I remember as a teenager, not even as a child, as a teenager, I had like a small room that got really small. For the most part, I spent a lot of my childhood with my pills in my suitcase. That just shows you the kind of like lifestyle I lived. And so I remember I started recalling rather the small tiny room. It was a pantry that then turned into a room. And I was like, yo, dad, those were some dark times, man, but it was wholesome. But I'm like, why am I bringing that memory first? So I let go of the exercise and I was like, I'm going to come back. The next day, I was like, okay, let me actually think about um, my childhood, Ruby. And that's when I was like, oh, because I went to boarding school from like grade 3 all the way to grade 6. So I didn't really have a childhood bedroom, so to speak. When I came back from holidays, there was like 3 holidays in the year. So and those were in between both sides of my parents. Uh, so either I make my mom's house or I make my dad's house. And there wasn't any designated, this is a space for Osvaldo. And it started to make sense why, as a grown up, I valued seeking stability and security for myself and whatever cost. I was like, this is the thing that I am going to work towards. And looking at how I've built my life currently, I can see that that was me doing justice to my inner child, letting them know that this is something you can achieve. But it's also then ended up being somewhat of a prison in that it's a comfort zone now because I'm like, oh, yeah. But one thing that I found really interesting was my relationship to single beds. And it was born from my childhood. So back in boarding school, right? It was bunk beds. We had bunk beds all over us. And it was like in the boys' dorm. It was a little bit packed. I almost felt like a prison. I would lie. But in a good way, when you're a child, you don't really care about those small details. But each of us had a nice single bunk bed, right? Like, and next to you would be one person on your right, another person on your left, and then you got someone else on your above you, as well as 2 other people. So even though I was in a single bed, there was a sense of community around me that the single bed felt like one, this is my own personal space to be me, but it feels whole in that I'm surrounded by other people. So subconsciously, single beds became a comfort zone for me growing up because I'd come back home and then it's like a whole entire different situation where there's no designated spot, for example, or for Osvaldo. Sometimes I'm sleeping on the couch, the other times I sleep on the floor. And then if I'm on at my mom's house, it was me and my brother. So there was now that sense of like, oh, I'm with somebody. This is why like me and my brother, I think we have a deeper bond because of that like subconscious rewiring, right? So I laugh because even now, like right now, I am sleeping on a single bed and it's by choice. I never understood why I was like so comfortable with it and not wanting to upgrade or anything like that. And then it made sense. I was like, oh, it's because from my childhood, it was the thing that brought me a sense of security and stability because it meant I could be with myself, but also have community around me of single pated people. I was like, that is so interesting. And that's why this week was also very challenging. At one point, it was asking about qualities in our friends, and I found it very hard to make a list of like friends. And this is not to say like I don't have friends, but like, like these friends in a circle. And most of my friends, because of how we eventually move apart and go different places, like I said, my mission in life was to secure that stability and security no matter the cost. And that cost meant that I became closed off to my grander community. So I think so, oh, there's a huge stalker um in making friends as an adult. And I think all of us really find it difficult. Like the more I've been on like platforms like TikTok, Instagram, all that people also say, hey, do you want to be friends? And I still find it very weird. Like the process itself as an adult, especially, it's hard because most times you don't know you like, what are your intentions? So I've actually, this is a hack I'm using and it's been so good in that if someone asks me to can I be your friend, especially on the internet, I just normally ask them back, okay, cool. But what is your idea of friendship? And I think that's such a very important question because it shows you what someone's intentions are and it reveals to you the why behind them wanting to be friends. And I also say that because a lot of like people in my DMs have like very weird intentions to say the least. Like I come with like a childlike faith where I'm just like, oh, like childlike, yeah, let's just say childlike faith where I'm like super pumped with anything and everything. I'm like that childlike wonder where I look at the world from those lens and it's been helping me see the world differently, like the whole inner child connection. So sometimes I didn't miss the ill intentions people might have, which is also very like it serves me very well because I don't end up being triggered by unnecessary things. I don't end up holding other people's negative energy because I'm holding my own inner child like wonder. So either way, it always works in my favor. But I've started to ask those questions. And I then in this chapter about reclaiming my sense of power, I then was like, it was now challenging me to say, why aren't I being the initiator of friendships? Why aren't I initiating communities? And that's when I was like, okay, also, I suppose the same question to me now. What is my ideal of friendship? What do I consider to the right qualities that I want in a friendship? And I was like, oh, it's time to do some projecting, because now I'm looking at myself in the friendships that I've sustained, in the ways that I've showed up as a friend, holistically. So I was like, what is it that matters to me most? And that's when I really came up with like a long list. Um, and I said, okay, what have I liked previously in the friendships that I've had and the friendships that I currently have? A lot of my friendships are also the long distance. So yeah, it's kind of hard. Sometimes you also do need people you can do stuff in person. So yeah. So the first thing I really have enjoyed is depth. I like friendships that have depth, our ability to dive into topics that like will grow us, topics that makes us feel uncomfortable. So it's not just like passive, like, oh yeah, you're my friend. And I know I have friends like those where they we don't speak for like a good year, like be apart, like you know how build friendships are sometimes. But when we come together, like in person, we sit and we have deep conversations. And it's like, I love that. I also love that the depth that comes with those conversations is the way people can be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is so important in friendships. Like being able to share and hold space for each other fully, whatever subject is on our minds, just to dive into it and be like, yo, I am going through this dark thing, or I am so happy about A, B, C, and D, and why it makes me happy. And then you just start being vulnerable. It doesn't always have to be about like the negative. Like being vulnerable also is, even in the happy moments, there is vulnerability in how you share your happiness. Like I've experienced me being vulnerable and I'm happy, and someone else being vulnerable uh, with themselves to me when they are happy. And it's like a different level because you really get to savor the happiness. You really get to experience and feel the joy on someone else's behalf because they've been vulnerable with uh with their journey, for example. So I really love that. I love mutual pouring. Um and why this is so important, I think I've witnessed friendships that were based on power dynamics, right? It was like, I have a need, and you helping me is just you fulfilling your ego in that, um, the power and dynamics of the friendships. Like suddenly a person has power over you because you are in need. And I was like, I don't want to be, I know a friending needs a friend indeed. I understand that, but I think now it's being distorted to kind of like be a power based dynamics, which I hate. So I really love mutual pouring where I'm aware of your needs, you're aware of my needs, and we're somehow able to complement each other and show up to the best of our abilities, obviously. Show up to the best of our abilities to pour into each other. And this also is starting to sound like a romantic relationship, but because I've had those friendships, I know it exists. Like, and I've had them equally with both, with both men and women. So I know it's fairly possible to have that kind of like platonic relationship with someone. So that was something I really value independence. And I think this is also where a sense of power comes into place, where I also do not want to lose my own power, where I can't enjoy other aspects of myself, or I am chaining the other person to say, this is how I live my life, you must live my life. If you want to be a part of it, you have to live it according to that. I think there has to be a certain level of independence that goes into friendships, right? Where you both maintain your individual identities. Again, it's starting to sound like romantic relationships, but you know what I mean? Like you don't want to be friends with all the time. It's like this. I mean, if okay, let me say you, but let me not say you, but rather I specific, specifically don't like that kind of like uh, dynamics because I do value my independence in that sometimes it helps me challenge myself. But so I like to maintain that sense of independence in friendships where I also have my individual identity so that when the change that is inevitable comes, it's not going to disrupt our friendship because we are still able to come together in on the terms where we are in alignment with. The friendship isn't attached to um our lack of independence. Well, lack of a better term, but it's not attached to our lack of independence. It's not attached to our core dependence. Instead, it's genuinely attached to I am there for you, you're there for me, and we are growing. And where we grow together, we go together. Where we need to do the individual work, we do the work independent of each other. So that's a trait I really value. Then A big one that's really important is aligned beliefs and holistic living, because I've seen this also goes into relationships, to be honest. I've seen how that's very important. You need to be equally yoked. That's where the yokeness happens. And because I've seen my own beliefs grow and evolve, all right, it's meant it came with the cost of me losing a lot of my friendships, which it was kind of sad, but it's like when you're no longer aligned with beliefs. Beliefs are very deep. Like I pointed out in the last episode, beliefs are very deep to people's identities. So that alignment of beliefs is important. And one of those beliefs is open mindedness for me. I really value open mindedness, being able to dive into whatever topics, whatever might seem taboo, and speak about it and share ideas and reciprocate in that sharing of ideas so that it's not like imposing my beliefs on top of yours, and find a point of harmony is so underrated in friendships. Like, I think that's why there's like a loneliness pandemic, because finding your tribe uh, when you're evolving in terms of beliefs is a bit difficult. And I even look at like the spirituality community as well. A lot of people have more friendships online than they do in person, because like yeah, it's hard to walk that journey, and especially because it requires you to be alone. It's a loner's journey. Like it's the wounded healer. Like when you're going through that journey, it really is calling you to discover yourself. My journey meant I was isolated for a good over a span of 3 years, but the last 6 months were hardcore isolation. Like, yeah, it was. If you look back at the first videos, I fully explained that. But yeah, it was kind of like very hard. Uh, Emotional intelligence, obviously, is like a no-brainer with everything I've said, and mindfulness as well is quite important. So that really helped me uncover a lot. Like, as you can see in that, how do I claim back my sense of power? Um, in terms of the different dynamics that went into my conditioning prior. So it was like realizing, oh, actually, no, it's because of A, B, C, and D. And the other thing that they spoke about, which I really loved, was anger. Um, so they have a quote here where they're like, anger is meant to be listened to. Anger is a voice, a shout, a plea, a demand. Anger is meant to be respected. Why? Because anger is a map. Anger shows us what our boundaries are. Anger is meant to be acted upon. It is not meant to be acted out. It was like, preach. Anger is the firestorm that signals the death of our old life. Anger is meant to be tapped into and drawn upon. Used properly, anger is useful. And I was like, amen. Come on now. I really felt like they hit the nail on that one. Interestingly, just a couple of the last full moon, like I went for a meditation circle, and it was letting go. And it was also being led by a life coach and an NLP practitioner, Coach Naz. Shout out to her. She then was like, it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to become angry. And I was like, yes, bars, spit, spit. And with me, I remember, not like I remember, I hardly get angry. Like, people know me as the person who's always smiling. And I've never actually seen anyone take advantage of that either. Contrary to like popular beliefs, so people are like, oh, yeah, don't be smiling because people are gonna what take advantage of you. Even if they do most of the times, I don't even see it, and like I'll walk away from it. It doesn't even like affect me. I'm like, oh, you tried doing this. Oh, shame. That's so cute. And I move unaffected, right? The day I remember I became angry was the day I learned what my boundaries are, what my values are, because I really was angry and I became angry. Like I didn't just stop it. I am angry. And then I let it go like I usually do. It was the first time I acted it out. And that's when I saw the difference. Like I really understood, oh, anger was useful in that it showed me where a space I shouldn't be in. And my response was supposed to just move away from that space, confront it, but move away from the space. But I then was like, be being angry is not enough. Let's become anger itself. And it was the first time I saw the monster. It was the first time I had like saw the shadow. And I started doing shadow work after that. I was like, yo, I didn't realize there was this aspect of me, you know, lying dormant in there. And that's when I truly realized that in society, all the people we point at and be like, you, but how could you? You are this, you're vile. They could easily be me. I once read this book called Dinner with Mugabe. Mugabe, president of Zimbabwe, who later on his legacy is tainted by being a dictator. And when you read that book, you truly see that any one of us could easily become a Mugabe in some way or another. Because when you look at his childhood, it was full of good intentions. It was full of, I'm headed in the right direction. It was full of like dreams that were very solid in that you could see this person had a calling upon them to liberate people. And it was even reinforced with people around him. But you also see neglect, you see um, things that were not dealt with, pain that was left lingering, a longing to be accepted, to have community. And the more I read it as an introvert, I was like, those are the signs. That's the signs right there. And it really showed me we all can be the worst person we consider someone else to be. It's a matter of choice and circumstances. Like it's just the line is like there. And unfortunately for him, because he never got to deal with that, even as he was growing up when his when his wife died in prison and he wasn't allowed the most human thing to mourn the loss of a loved one. Imagine what that's gonna do to your heart, you know. So it showed me that we really can become the worst people we consider in society. Like we can become that easily. And it makes you come to these things with grace, the way you start to understand, like, that could easily be me. Like there's nothing special. Like give me money and whatnot and let me walk into that space of power without having healed and watch me become that monster. Easy, easy. I'm not gonna go too deep into examples, but I'm sure you know a lot of people here, a lot of men rather in society. Like you look at R. Kelly, you look at P. Diddy, right? See, I gave the examples either way. You look at those two guys and what they did, basically, I can't, like, you can't justify what they've done in their adulthood with the free choice that they have, right? With the free will that they have. They chose to do what they did. But take a look at their childhood and you start to see the neglect that happened. You start to have sympathy and say, man, if only we had a culture where we facilitated the healing of childhood wounds, where we facilitated the healing of the inner child as grown-ups. How could things be more different? You know? And and it's that one hit hard because I was like, I wish there was a better way we did things as a community, because it's all of us as a community, how we raise children, if they could be change in that, what the effect would be and impact would be on society. Imagine how many victims could have been quote unquote saved, could have not ever uh, met that those monsters in their full grown adult beings, if only we had somehow facilitated healing along the way, not just healing for them, but even for their abusers, because it's a chain. It's like a chain, and it doesn't seem like it stops because amongst those same victims, if they are not attended to and they receive the necessary healing they need, guess what? It's still going to be a cycle, and it's really that's it comes to that. So going back to anger, I really saw how it can be a good indicator to where your boundaries are, to what you value the most. In that moment when I was talking about where I became angry, I really saw I value trust, integrity, and loyalty. Like if you attack my integrity and if you taint it and it's made with betrayal, so I've seen, like, because I even had to think about the grudges I have in life. Like, I have this one list. I used to have this list. It was three people that I took into my adulthood. I'm like, this is crazy. And it was something stupid. It was like in class where someone ranted on me. But the way they did it was lack of integrity because they really made me look like the person I was not. And that pissed me off. And they were on my list. I was like, why did I keep this person for years on my list? Because now they're a compass to say, this is the thing we hate, but we don't tolerate. And I had to let that experience go. But instead of like holding on to the anger, hold on to the core belief that I value integrity and move with that. And you see why like being angry and be angry but not become angry makes so much sense. So that was a fight to learn. Um, the other thing that we dived into this week was answered prayers. So, so this is what she said. Answered prayers are scary. They imply responsibility. You asked for it. Now that you've got it, what are you going to do? Watch out for what you pray for. You just might get it. And this is so true. Like there are times where you get very anxious about the change that you've wanted and longed for such a long time. When you see it coming, that you're scared. Like you're like, this means I have to be more responsibility. I have to be more responsible. This means that I have to step up to the plate. And yeah, that is scary. That sometimes it's scary. It is like a underlying fear. And I've learned to start using positive anticipation where it's like, no, I'm ready for this. That's why I even value now the seasons where I'm in isolation or the seasons where I need to grow, where I need to work towards something because that tells me this is good preparation. And it's changed my perspective. So even in interviews, I get in there like I know everything. Like I've been prepared. Every interview, no matter how much many times I don't fit what they are looking for. I think that I got to the interview for me tells me, yo, you have something and you need to stand by that something so that you don't fear and it's self sabotage. So I've started to show up like holistically in interviews where um sorry, where this is what I wanted to read, where this statement is gonna make sense. I've learned as a rule of thumb never to ask whether you can do something. Say instead that you are doing it. Then fasten your seatbelt. The most the most remarkable things follow. It's like, yeah, yeah, yes, sir. It's what's up. It's happened to me so many times where I just end up in places where I'm like, genuinely, I don't know. Like, I don't know how we're doing this, but we'll find out along the way. If around to find out. And mantra works wonders. That mantra is so freaking beautiful. And this portion of the chapter spoke a lot about synchronicities, how things just end up aligning, right? And it was calling us to be alert for support and encouragement for unexpected quarters. Be open to receiving gifts. Be open to free tickets, free trips, anything. And I don't want to lie, this week has had beautiful synchronicities. Right now, you can see I'm recording during daytime because I literally got, you know, an exclusive invite. There's a record label that's launching in South Africa, and this weekend they are doing like multiple activations strictly by invite only. And prior 2 days before the first event, I got someone was like, "Oh yeah, I thought of you. Here's an RSVP. Sign in, and you can connect with all these cool, amazing people, DJs, artists, creators, all of those things." And I was like, "This is very cool." So it's rather beautiful that that happened in the midst of this chapter because it was like, oh, it's really in the small things as well. And I say yes to the experience without heavily anticipating what the experience should be, but like going with the flow of like, oh yeah, I've been invited, let me go and then we'll chat and then we'll see when we get there. And so far it's been nice. I mean, you connected with a lot of friends I hadn't spoken to in a minute. Um, yeah, you're the sounds too sensitive for the internet. There was a task where it was like, take a look at your habits that interfere with your self-nurturing and cause shame. Like small thing whether you watch TV a lot lately, don't do what you're supposed to do. And I'll share one that I wrote, which was quitting too early in the process. Sometimes I was like, deuces. And I think I'm like redirecting myself towards what I want. But I've seen similar things that keep coming to challenge me. And I'm like, especially like leadership. I've been running away from that for a good minute or so. I need to stop. Need to stop. So I'm holding myself accountable to not quit in the early phases and then go with the experience, see where it takes me and have good returns. But we're going to end it here. So here, go prepare and go enjoy myself. But there's no but. If you watch this to the end, may you recover your strong sense of power, power in who you are, power in your beliefs, and ensure that you're showing up authentically in every space you walk into, because that is the most invaluable thing you can do for yourself. You can do to change your reality and become who you know deep inside you are meant to be. So walk in your power and have a great week. Cheers.